Our next speaker is our Central Committee, one of our Central Committee members, Ranjeet Brar.
Comrades, it's a pleasure to be with you. I hope you can hear me. I'm a little bit higher than the speaker than everyone else. Last time I spoke in this hall was also a celebration of the October Revolution. It was the 80th anniversary of the October Revolution. And when I think of the political ground we've traversed since there, I think actually that we are heading on the right trajectory, and it gives me great confidence when I see the hall filled with so many faces. And knowing as I do that you also represent but a fraction of the support, the growing support that our party and our politics have in this country and throughout the world. At that time, we just joined an enterprise called the Socialist Labour Party. It was a party based around the prestige of, and the personality really of a single great trade union fighter in this country, Arthur Scargill, who we still have who we still have great respect for, because it was one of the few big industrial struggles that caused serious loss of sleep to our own bourgeoisie. There was a serious threat to our own bourgeoisie. The strength of that party was that it inspired and drew people to him around that personality. The weakness of that party was its lack of understanding of theory. And our comrades have already said it. We're a party that understands without a revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. And if you want any greater proof of that, you need only look at any of the movements that we've seen that have become momentarily mass movements in this country. The Stop the War movement, on a crest of the wave, actually of the wave of the opposition of a section of the bourgeoisie of this country to the war against Iraq, became a mass movement. But why did it become a mass movement? Who printed the placards? Who printed the banners? It was the Mirror, it was the Mail, it was bourgeois papers who really mobilized for that demonstration. The Liberal Party mobilized for the demonstration. Sections of the Labour Party even mobilized for the demonstration. And yet, even as they gathered, as 2 million people came out and voiced their opposition to war, Tony Blair stood and ordered the bombers over their head, and the movement was seen to be a total failure. Why did 2 million people on the streets, that's 4% of the population of the country, backed by 95% of the population, why were they unable to express and win their argument, win the day, change the policy of the country, change the policy of the army, change the actions, the military strategy? Why were they not able to change the politics of our country? Because they were headed by the Labour Party. Because the Labour Party is a social democratic party. The social democratic party which is the representative of our imperialist bourgeoisie in the working class movement. Social democracy which had shown itself to be false. Social democracy which, when challenged, social democracy, of course, was the movement from which communism hailed. Social democracy, social democrat, was the name that communists gave themselves before the First World War. What have we learnt from the First World War? Because it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you here today on the 100th anniversary of the Great Socialist October Revolution. But you know, it's the 100th anniversary of so many events. It's also the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Passchendaele, the mechanized slaughter, the trench warfare, in which hundreds of millions were mobilized to knock each other's brains out, to murder their fellow workers from other nations. Marx and Engels, my comrades have quoted to you the Communist Manifesto, one of my favorite lines from the Communist Manifesto, which was true until the October Revolution, is that the working men have no country. We cannot take from them what they do not have. He famously penned those words to dispel the myths that were said about communists. That the capitalists would say, oh, these people are anti-nationalists. They're against their own workers. They're against our country. He said, no, this is not our country. This country belongs to the tiny few, ever-dwindling band of moneybags. Paul made a beautiful speech, and he made reference to that well-known now Amnesty International statistic that 85 people have as much wealth as half the world's population. Now, I'm sure it will not have escaped your notice. We're daily regaled by the decision of the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee. They are the ones only now who seem to tell us that there has been a financial crisis, that we've lived through a period of austerity and financial crisis brought about by a total crisis of overproduction of the world capitalist system. The worst that we've known since the 1930s, since the 1920s. And that drove us inexorably towards World War I, World War II, just as the previous inter-imperialist conflict had driven us inexorably towards World War I. That financial crisis has an effect on capitalism. It causes intense competition. The markets are glutted. As we said, we live in a world where people die, people go hungry, people are underclothed, underfed. In fact, 40 million people die every year from malnutrition and malnutrition-related diseases, of which 16 million are children every year. This is a Holocaust that no one commemorates. You know? It's also the 100th year of the Balfour Declaration. How instrumental has our own ruling class been seamlessly in every act of regressive policy? If the Bolsheviks could say, we're proud of the greatness of our culture and of our people, we're also ashamed that our bourgeoisie and the Tsar has been the hangman of every revolution, how much more true is that of the British working class here in London today? Unquestionably, workers of this country, as in fact all countries, are talented, are resourceful, have the ability to create. We have a proud history of literature. We have a proud history, actually, of revolution. Though it's not popularly known and it's not propagated, but our bourgeoisie has been the hangman of every revolution throughout the world. If you download a map, which is very easily available now, you can see which countries the bourgeoisie of England, the British ruling class, has invaded. And you'll find that of all the world's countries, there are 6 or 7 that it has not invaded. Because it's easier to name the ones that we haven't than the ones that we have. George Galloway couldn't be with us today. He spoke at a previous meeting when we celebrated the 60th anniversary of China, and he told a joke that he told his grandfather used to tell, and I've heard since. He says, the British had an empire, let us never forget, on which the sun never set. Because even God wouldn't trust an Englishman in the dark. That's an insult which is told by the Irish, and understandably so given their history. But really it's not aimed at the mass of the British working class unless we associate ourselves with the policy of our ruling class. And it's high time we set out our own stall, and that's what our party's trying to do. We have no interest in the exploitation, despoilation, destruction, bloodshed, violence, murder, assassination of working people across the globe elsewhere, so that our bourgeoisie can sit easier in their beds, can collect them vast sums, and, as in the case of crisis, when they've impoverished the masses, when they find it hard to sell their goods, they can impose austerity at home. And the point I was going to make in the first instance, during this period of crisis, one capitalist kills many. It was 85, a disgusting figure, 85. Maybe this side of the room. This many capitalists have as much money as half the world's population. That was true a year ago. 1 year. Well, the figures are always a little out of date. They've been updated. Now it's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this front row, this many people, not actually you, this many people, a handful of people really, a handful of people in our world are the beneficiaries of the entire productive labor of humanity. That is the system of imperialism that Lenin characterized. That's the system of imperialism that actually our chairman, Harpal Brar, has spent his life's work demonstrating is still relevant, is still in existence. And that is why the experience of the October Revolution cannot be old and cannot be stale while this parasitic, moribund, imperialist capitalist system continues to leach the lifeblood of humanity daily before our eyes. could go on all day. There are a couple of quotes that I want to read from you because they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. Okay? Lenin, commenting in 1918 on the influence of the USSR upon the proletarians of all countries, said, "The example of the Soviet Republic will stand before them for a long time to come." And here we are today, 100 years later. Sadly, that example still has to stand before us because we have not yet achieved the task we've set ourselves. But the example of the Soviet Republic will stand before us for a long time to come. Our Socialist Republic of Soviets will stand secure. Alas, it did stand secure as a torch of international socialism and as an example to all the laboring masses. Over there, conflict, war, bloodshed, the sacrifice of millions of lives, capitalist exploitation. Here, a genuine policy of peace and a socialist republic of Soviets. That rang so true, because the fruit of that destructive conflagration that was the First World War, in which 40 million workers lost their lives to protect the profits of the imperialist parasites, the fruit of that, if that was Pandora's box of ills, that capitalism had opened up, the hope that came into the world, the fruit of that was precisely the October Revolution, which showed to workers the way forward, the way out of the conflagration, the way out of the charnel house, the way to build confidently, to get rid of the old and build the new. There were people then as now who looked at the October Revolution and said, well, it's a very authoritarian thing. There are some beautiful quotes around the hall. I'm not going to read them to you, but I invite you all to give them some attention after the meeting. Because, of course, the main accusations now are hurled against Stalin as being some kind of bestial, bloodthirsty dictator, precisely in order to destabilize and sap the confidence of the working class to build a future, to get rid of exploiters and build socialism. But I invite you to compare Stalin's statement on the dictatorship of the proletariat. Dictatorship meaning rule. Proletariat meaning the propertyless, the downtrodden, the oppressed, the vast majority of humanity, the 99% as they've been come to know of late. So if the rule of the vast majority, this is what we're talking about when we use the strictly scientific term dictatorship of the proletariat. We're talking about a huge flourishing of democracy. That's what the October Revolution represented. Real power in the hands of the masses of the workers, educating the workers to the point where they're capable of wielding it, actually taking the necessary steps to remove those who stand in their way, smashing the old capitalist state which oppresses us, and building a new state which enables and empowers the workers when they take the land and give it to the masses, when they take the factories and give them back to the masses, when they take all the fruits of the earth and use them to provide a better life for humanity, all the things that we lament every day that can't be done because it's austerity. And we've got to tighten our belts. And there's just no way of doing it. And in order to protect the profits of the very rich, and of course by protecting the profits of the very rich, that will trickle down to all of you somehow. Don't think about it too hard. But it will trickle down to you and we'll all benefit. So no tax to Starbucks, no tax to any really large capitalist company. We must get Google in. We must invite billionaires to come in. We must cheapen your labor because it's human nature. Because they have to be rewarded. They have to be rewarded. Otherwise, what's their incentive if they're not going to become multi-billionaires? Why would they do anything? On the other hand, it's human nature for all of you that you won't work unless we beat you and starve you perennially. That's also human nature. It's just a different human nature for a different class and a different section of society. What hypocrisy. No wonder that the representatives of our parliament, of all parliaments, are so divorced from the masses. It's a deliberate system. It's the system of imperialism which has separated the leadership. It picks out the leadership in advance. You can see the process before you. If you see the kind of SWTP type students who come up through the movement, who get picked as being a bright Oxbridge lad, who get into the Labour Party, who become a Labour Party MP, what are they doing it for? Are they doing it for a deep moral cause? Are they doing it to liberate the masses? Do they feel a deep sympathy with the plight of the workers? No, they don't. They ultimately they're bought off systematically. Even our unions, even our union leaders, who, periodically you feel these campaigns for a mass and militant, democratic unionist. Everyone's very excited about it. Unionist union leader. Inevitably, once they come into the national executive of their union, they have a lifestyle and a prestige and access to papers, and they write a column in the Times about how this will affect business. And they have expenses, and they have secretaries, and they have a lifestyle and they have no democratic accountability to their membership and to the working class, certainly not to the unemployed. I was reading William Gallagher's book, The Rolling of the Thunder. And if you see the mobilization, they had 5.5 million unemployed. And they mobilized unemployed, and the unemployed marched, and they had hunger marches, and there were mass meetings and mass demonstrations up and down the country. This country, England, this country that we're told has no revolutionary history, was seething with revolution. The reason that the Labour Party didn't stay in power was not because that the workers flooded to the Labour Party were exposed as not representing the working class and they lost the confidence of the masses systematically, because every time they were in office they represented the interests of the bourgeoisie, whether it was abroad hanging Indian revolutionaries, whether it was abroad bombing Iraq, whether it was abroad dividing and partitioning India, whether it was abroad in Kenya, whether it was setting up concentration camps, whether it was enacting murder in Malaya, in order to protect the monopoly of rubber, which was then so important, or whether it was at home, cutting unemployment, restricting the organization and terms and conditions of working class. The Labour Party has at every opportunity, no matter what leadership or administration it has come under, has shown the best way to stab the working class in the back. It does it at every opportunity. It will do so again and again as long as we allow it to. And what we need to do is relearn some of the old lessons. Relearn that actually what we need is organization. That we can't have a strong organization amongst the masses unless we're unashamed in going out, mobilizing them and telling them our ideology. So I would invite all of you, please, if you haven't done so, to visit our literature stall at the back. Read our books. Learn the theory. Get in touch with your local comrades. Help build our branches. Help build a revolutionary alternative for this country. Because, just as Lenin said, the workers of the world applaud us. They salute us for breaking the iron ring of imperialism. The impact that every single revolutionary struggle has on the minds of workers everywhere is incalculable. Venezuela is a threat. Cuba is a threat. Every single country that doesn't toe the line of imperialism is a threat. Let's not forget that not so long ago, tiny Grenada was a mortal threat to the United States of America and had to be overthrown because it dared to have a socialist revolution. So yes, the bottom line is imperialists are very, very few. There are really 5 of them. They have a slightly bigger social organization, but there are 5 people that all your suffering, all the problems of the world that affect you, your families, your conditions, even if you're relatively well off. You can't have stability. You can't go out. You can't protect yourself. All of this is set up to favor a tiny handful, a tiny clique of businessmen. So please join with us, help to strengthen our organization, and we actually can forge a new weapon capable of bringing socialism to Britain, having a socialist republic, a socialist Soviet republic of nations, starting with our revolution and spreading throughout the world. So thank you again for joining us. Long live the Great Socialist October Revolution. Viva! Viva! Viva!
Comrades, one of the comrades has passed me a message that the president of the Socialist Labour Party is here, who simply wants to take 1 minute greeting this meeting. Is he around, John Tyrrell?